Got all them other trades. We're the head of the meeting. If there's anything that's involved with unions, labor, that's round pushers.
Like I said, I
Yeah. Nice to meet you. What was your name, sir?
my name is Steve Robinson. I'm with Normal Steel.
Joshua Roderick. I'm here live. Staff or public comment.
Clarify.
Yeah, we come out in full force when there's something that
This side again.
pertains to the community and something
Well, that way you
that's
don't
wrong.
outwardly into my picture, especially if you make.
We got probably 400 to 600 in the
Yep.
private sector and a couple hundred in the.
We average about 500 of construction.
Well, this is all me.
Cleans roughly about 600 people.
500 construction, 300 private. Public. We're at 800 just in this county.
And then you went through the litany of how many
500 construction.
opposing him previously. Figured out Stu.
He's due.
Okay, well then I can wait, I can wait. Then you can just.
Just 100 of our public sector.
Yeah, that's true, I can just.
City employees,
But text me your number.
local housing authorities, Unified, Plain County.
So much for 655.
Plain County. For both our public and construction.
445 is a 3672.
Depends what job.
Yeah, we were.
Just a couple of years ago, I put in the new water system. Water man.
Oh, good.
That's how we do it.
So technically, it'd be the same number for co-attendant. We just go, same number for like same number of laborers that we have available. That's the number of laborers we have available to work through the hall. And then we send out everyone in McLean County in our jurisdiction. Yeah.
Come on up here, guys.
He knew.
How many like for
Good
construction?
evening, everyone. And before we start tonight, we have an award presentation having to do with our ever stellar water department at the town of Normal. And John, I'm turning it over to you to do some introductions.
Todd LaFountain is with City of Springfield, CWLP, but he's also the president-elect of the Illinois section of the American Water Works Association. And Kevin Hannell is our district board member.
Yep.
With the Illinois section as well.
So we've got some exciting news tonight. It's not every day we get to come into council chamber, you know, with good news. But anyhow, the American Water Works Association is about 50,000 strong across America. Here in Illinois, the Illinois section, we have about 2,500 members. So we're the fourth largest section in the nation. And John has been active in the organization. He and myself and a few others have been the few of the people downstate, south of I-80, that have really gotten engaged in this program. It's called the Water Ambassador Program. And so what the award is, it's a communications type, PR type award, and it's trying to bring attention to the water cycle and the water department in general. Most often, the only time we get to communicate with the public is in crisis, so water main breaks, things of that nature. So this is to kind of bring awareness to the public, let them see what we do every day, and hopefully gain a greater appreciation for water and your water department. So with that, I believe this is the second year that Normal's received this award. The program's only been around for 4 years, so they're right there in one of the most active communities in terms of receiving awards for the Water Ambassador Program. It is a gold award. There's a gold, silver, and bronze award, so it is the highest level of award. So with that, I'd like to congratulate the mayor and John for some excellent work in receiving the Water Ambassador Award here in 2024.
Right, good job.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Kevin.
Streets on too?
Thank you. Yeah, street sign.
Thanks, Kevin.
We'll have- John keeps this up, we'll have one on every lamp post.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I tried. You don't want to hear from me. Speech.
Call to order a meeting for the Normal Town Council for November 18th, 2024. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus,
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz. Here. Ms. Harris. Here. Mr. Byers. Ms. Smith. Here. Mr. Preston.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one public commenter tonight, and that would be Mike Rakes from International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. If Mike, take a chair up here, and rules are brief. Please state your name for the record, and you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, good evening. My name is Mike Rakes, and I'm the president of the McLean and Livingston County Building and Construction Trades Council, as well as the business manager for the Electrical Workers Union. Thank you, City Manager Reese, Mayor Kus, and council members for allowing me to address you this evening. I'd like to encourage you to approve Agenda Item 5K, Ordinance amending the purchasing policy. In the ordinance is a project labor agreement. Project labor agreements are pre-hire agreements that establish terms and conditions of employment for all crafts on infrastructure projects. The mutual agreements are between a construction owner, such as a contractor, developer, or a public body, and a coalition of labor unions supplying skilled workers for the duration of the project. The main purpose of a PLA is to promote predictability, stability, and productivity on construction projects. PLAs ensure that taxpayer-funded projects utilize apprentices and expand work opportunities for people from historically disadvantaged backgrounds. Recently, the Illinois Economic Policy Institute performed a study titled "The Impacts of Project Labor Agreements on Competition, Costs, Apprenticeships, and Diversity." The study concluded that there were more contractor bids on PLA projects on average than projects that didn't have a PLA attached. PLA projects are more diverse and utilize more apprentices to complete the project. Another major impact is the fact that the local construction workers will be the workers on these projects. By voting yes and supporting this ordinance is a vote to support the local construction workforce in our community. Construction workers who choose to go into a professional trade, study, and work as an apprentice to hone the skills they need to build our community will have the ability to work on these projects that their taxpayer dollar funds. The timing of this ordinance coincides with the National Apprenticeship Week, which happens to be this week, November 17th through 23rd. On behalf of the hundreds of union construction workers in Normal, I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to omnibus agenda items that will be taken with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. And going around.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Items considered under omnibus tonight are approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of November 4th, 2024. A report to receive and file Town of Normal expenditures for payment as of November 13th, 2024. A resolution requesting permission to close a portion of U.S. Highway 51 for the annual J.C.'s Holiday Parade. A resolution authorizing a contract with Hare Construction Incorporated for the 2024 manhole rehabilitation contract, and that's in the amount of $305,400. A resolution authorizing the execution of a joint funding agreement for construction work with the Illinois Department of Transportation for Franklin Avenue Bridge over the north branch of Sugar Creek north of Virginia Avenue. A resolution authorizing the execution of a joint funding agreement for construction work with the Illinois Department of Transportation for West College Avenue from the Norfolk Southern Railroad to White Oak Road. A resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Bloomington to locate meter reading equipment on the Town of Normal water tower. A resolution accepting the bid and authorizing the purchase of a 2024 Polaris Ranger XP kinetic electric utility vehicle, that's a mouthful, from EJ Equipment Incorporated of Manteno, Illinois, in the amount of $34,224. A resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding with Marketplace City Incorporated for services related to technology procurement. An ordinance approving easements for the Bloomington Normal Water Reclamation District Northwest Interceptor Sewer Project. An ordinance amending our purchasing policy, and an ordinance adopting the 2024 Fire Protection Association No. 1 Fire Prevention Code, National Fire Protection Association No. 101 Life Safety Code, and amending the municipal Chapter 6 having to do with the fire code. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye, those items are approved. We move to general orders, which is a motion to authorize the preparation of a 2024 property tax levy ordinance.
Move for approval. Second.
Ms. Reese, do you have opening comments?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. This is the time of year when we ask council to direct staff to prepare the levy, and following council action tonight, we will return at your second meeting in December, asking you to formally adopt the levy. That allows us to get the required property tax levy on file with the McLean County appropriate offices, and they can then apply it for 2025. So this 2024 levy that we are recommending is an increase over 2023. All the information is detailed in your council report. The ultimate bottom line increase we are seeking is a 4.91% in the levy, which supports general fund operations, public safety pension obligations, IMRF pension obligations, as well as our Social Security requirements, and the normal public library levy, property tax levy, is all built into that 4.91% increase. It equates to a total increase of $701,000 to be collected more than last year's collection. The ultimate impact on the property tax rates will be a reduction of 12 cents from the property tax rate of 2023. So we try to include all of this information and have as detailed of a council action report as possible, but certainly staff is prepared to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. Mr. Preston.
Thanks, Mayor. Not a question for staff, but just a quick comment. I am glad to see this levy come with a proposed rate decrease. However, and also glad to see that we have an increase in our public pension systems for both police and fire. I think that those are, two that I feel strongly about, as with all, and that we're on track for 100% funding model, that continues is another big priority. The only
concern that I have with this levy is the $500,000 into the general fund. In years past, we've been coming off of, last year included, a multi-million-dollar budget surplus. And at a time when prices continue to rise across the board for people, not only in this community but around the country and around the world, I think that we are close enough with that 500 that it would almost offset the levy increase of 700, and as a result, I can't support this. But I do support certainly the public pension funding increases that are part of this levy tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Reese?
Thank you. I did want to explain, and Mr. Preston, you touched on it. The levy that we are recommending this evening does tie in back to a formula that we had presented to council in the past. The pension funding for public safety pensions basically is continuing to reach our target of 100% funded by 2040. And I had failed to mention that before, but I did want to tie that in primarily so the audience is aware. I know council is aware that that is our funding goal. 100% by 2040 for both police and fire pension funding. And then, of course, the rest of the levy is, as I mentioned, our IMRF, Social Security obligations, normal public library, and then, as Mr. Preston mentioned, $500,000 in support of general fund operations. Thank you.
Further comments? Ms. Lorenz?
Thank you. I think the timing is good for me to go following Mr. Preston because I echo his concerns as well. And I want us to be mindful of a couple of things, especially since we do have an audience tonight. Tonight's vote, while it is a vote to direct staff to prepare the levy, and then we come back with a second vote, the amount is very important tonight. So when we go and say, please prepare the levy, that dollar amount that we are asking them to prepare it at is being pretty well set tonight. So having said that, the other thing I want to caution is that when you divide a number by a larger number, you get a smaller number. And so it's easy to start doing a lot of gymnastics with these numbers and algebra and things like that. The rate is going to go down because we're dividing it by a larger equalized assessed value. That's gone up by, we think, around 15 or 16%. So no wonder the rate is going to go down. The number you need to watch, and the number that I am watching, is the amount of the levy itself. The levy is going from 14.28 million to 14.9, almost 15 million. I am not in favor of raising that levy, albeit I do believe we can keep the levy flat or near flat and still accomplish the important goals of, one, funding our pensions at near 100%. I did ask for what the sensitivity was, and I was told somewhere between 90 and 100%. Now, I don't know if that's 92 or 97, but I think we can largely meet that obligation, even keeping the levy flat to meet our obligation for pension funding. And I think that we need to give our taxpayers a break wherever we can find it. I made this argument some weeks ago or months ago now with respect to another tax decision we made. We maintained that tax. I am looking, as a representative of the citizens of Normal and the taxpayers of which we all are, some relief for our taxpayers. And the $165,000 average house doesn't exist anymore. It's about twice that, maybe a little less, about $287,000. So the difference is going to be not $3.81 difference, it's going to be probably closer to $7 difference. That might not seem like a lot, but again, I am standing firm on the need to try to find tax relief anywhere we can find it in an otherwise heavily tax-burdened state. And so I would prefer and would support a flat or near flat tax levy from the property. I do not agree with something as large as nearly a 5% increase. Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, and I guess I'll expand this is about the math conversation to include both sides. My colleague referenced a conversation we had about grocery tax a few months back. And I said at that time that if we're going to talk about the revenue side and trying to balance the budget, we're going to acknowledge inflation, that we also have to acknowledge those two things for this organization. Plain and simple, the cost to operate this organization is going up. The cost to do infrastructure work is going up. The cost to get our water chemicals is going up. And the revenue, as we listened to last meeting, is waning. We're seeing a declining sales tax projection. We'll see what it really turns out. And so we also have to take that into consideration when we're starting to look at what we're actually asking for. And the math is right. The EAV is going up. And so fortunately what that means is, as my colleague was alluding to in the example, for somebody who owns a $165,000 house, what we're talking about is $3.80 for the year, not a month, but a year, to solve this gap, to help make sure that we're not just keeping up with pensions, but that we're actually making progress on funding public safety pensions. An increase is an increase, but at that small level, to close a gap and not have to cut services someplace out, because that's fundamentally what we're talking about. You can't just take $500,000 out of a budget and think that there's no impact. It has to come from somewhere. So we'd literally have to cut something out of what we're doing in the operations. So for me, for such a small gap, I'm in favor of this. I appreciate that on some level. This was a compromise from staff. They wanted to ask for more. They didn't, and that's what we're seeing in this report today, is a compromise from staff, what they originally had wanted to ask for us. So for those reasons, I am supportive. Thanks.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. So the issue has been raised specifically looking at the $500,000 that's earmarked for the general fund. Ms. Reese, and I apologize for not giving you an opportunity to research in advance, but off the top of your head, can you speak to some of the uses the town has made of the so-called contingency or surplus funds that were a budget item in the general fund in prior years?
I will try to do that, yes. And if I need more support, I'm sure Finance Director Mr. Hune will jump right in. In terms of past years, when we've ended our fiscal year with a surplus, we have typically, the last few years, we've taken those surplus dollars and we've allocated those investments into both police and fire pensions. We've added additional monies beyond our required funding level into police and fire pension fundings or pensions, and we've put additional surplus dollars into our pavement projects. And we've basically called that pensions and pavement in terms of our surplus. So that has allowed us to do more capital projects. In terms of the $500,000 that we are seeking for the general fund levy, I guess I'll do a little bit more of a historical view. For a number of years, we used to have $1.6 million as part of our pension, our property tax levy, just built into the property tax, and that supported general fund operations. When we went through a few years of economic challenges and the like, and we also at that time wanted to do our best to reduce the levy, and we cut expenses, we eliminated that $1.6 million levy. And it's just recently, in recent years, the last couple of years, where we've tried to now reintroduce a relatively small dollar amount. I know $500,000 is a big number, but when our levy is $14.2 million, $500,000 of that is what we are allocating in support of our general fund operations. For this 2024 levy that we are asking, for council to support. It's 14.9 million, nearly 15 million. Again, $500,000 of that to support general fund operations. The general fund is basically the account that supports most of the municipal operations. Water Department and Sewer Division of Public Works are the only two what we call enterprise funds that are supported by user revenues, user fees. So everything else, police, fire, parks and recreation, public works, all the services we provide, even the building inspections department and the like, the general fund supports all of the operation in that regard.
And as a contingency fund is intended to do, although this is not being labeled as a contingency fund, but just going into the general fund account, it is there to provide a cushion in case something is needed that isn't planned for in the budget, because as Mr. McCarthy pointed out, the town of Normal's expenses are going up as household expenses are going up. And I would also point out that I think it's prudent to have incremental increases over a steady period instead of having to do a major catch-up of nearly 18%, as is happening in our neighbor community, so that I am satisfied that the town of Normal is being prudent with this request. And although the city manager indicated that it is funding the police and fire pensions and helping with IMRF and Social Security, it is not funding all of the obligations of the non-union workers in the IMRF and Social Security. So that needs to be highlighted as well. Thank you.
Ms. Harris.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I won't belabor too much over this because some of my points were already covered by Councilmember McCarthy as well as Councilmember Smith. But I do feel it very important for me to share a few things, especially recently coming back from the National League of Cities. While I will say some of my information seemed somewhat doom and gloom for communities, I feel it was ironic that this is coming up now for us, and it will allow us to position ourselves well for some things that are to come. And one thing I know about our community is we always prepare very in a very mindful way. We are always very, you can basically say conservative on how we budget, knowing some of the things that may be reduced while we have had success in our revenues. They are not anticipated to see that type of success going forward. The irony behind it is while that is happening, the request or the expectation of what should be provided as a community continues to increase. And this is not just us, but this layers on many things when you're talking about the increase of costs that are taking place and lots of other things that are to come. I'll just say that. I think this will keep us still moving forward in the way we have as a community, and we will not see the impact as some communities will see. While no one likes to hear, and I think it is one of those mental things we have, that there's an increase, and nobody wants to pay $7 more per year if you want to double the amount of what it would cost on the average of a $165,000 house, and say that that's not an average anymore, so basically double that. So $7 a year, you know, I'd rather pay that now than pay 100 times over that when the storm does come, because it's coming. But I'd rather have us insulated as a community, making the right decisions now, whether they hurt and seem not like the thing we want to do, but to do it now and put us in a better position we still have to have our streets fixed. We still have to have other things that we do. And I'm not in support of cutting things that we really need, including staff. Some people will tell you that. I'm not into privatizing things, and definitely not right now in this type of environment. So whatever we need to do to maintain what we have and to be the community that we are, that continues to set us apart in Central Illinois, that I will support.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks. Just one follow-up comment to make sure that we're keeping everything in perspective in terms of the $500,000 going into the general fund. Our general fund revenue and expenses is a little shy of $100 million this fiscal year. So the $500,000 that we're talking about is equivalent to roughly 0.5%. So as there are talks of, certainly the services that are provided by the general fund at large are most of the town operations. I don't think anybody is suggesting major changes to those. The $500,000 in this property tax levy that goes to the general fund equates to about 0.5% of the revenue that goes into the general fund this fiscal year. Thanks.
Ms. Lorenz?
Second bite at the apple, as we get to do on the same topic. You make a very good point that the 500,000 is a fraction, and so when I think about the general fund, I think about probably all agree on the 80% of or more of what needs to come out, what needs to be funded by the general fund. I mean, obviously we have to keep up with pensions. We haven't mentioned library yet. Library, of course, we have to continue to fund them, and that's part of this levy. Police, fire, public works, water, sewer, those are your meat and potatoes things. And based on the information that I have learned from our council manager updates and a follow-up conversation I had with Ms. Reese and Mr. Hune, we can largely meet the objectives of continuing operations and meeting two very important criteria that the staff puts forth, and that is funding our pensions and trying to diversify our income on the general fund as much as possible. We were not provided any other scenarios of what would less than 500,000 be? What would be if we found that sweet spot between 90 and 100 and we're at 97? What are those different scenarios? We were given one scenario, and I'm saying it's too much. When I asked why this particular scenario was put forth, it was told to me that staff preferred it. Okay, more money is usually better for spending. My point is, our job here is to be the kind of quality check, if you will, on what the taxpayers are feeling. And the taxpayers are feeling their wallets are pinched. It's no wonder that sales tax revenue is going down, because they're spending all their money on eggs at the grocery store because they're so darn expensive. So we've got to think about where we, as a council, have to think about how we can best represent where people are at. And like I said earlier, find ways to find some tax relief right now, because that is what is needed. Thank you.
Further? Yep. Ms. Reese?
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. In terms of the levy, as council knows, staff is directed by council. We move forward based on council vote and council decision and majority of council rules. And I just want to make it clear, the recommended levy is based upon a formula that we've reviewed with council in past years. It's the same formula council has seen last year, prior years. So to say that staff just preferred it is slightly erroneous. I guess I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Staff does recommend this, and certainly we prefer this based on some other non-formula calculation or a random number. but we will react to anything that council authorizes. To be clear, the formula that has been accepted by council in the past and recommended and reflected here in this council report is as I stated. It's the normal public library levy, which we don't do much with. We adjust based on the library's needs. They have a separate board, and this is their recommendation. The rest of the levy that supports the town of Normal has been, and the formula has been, that we will fund public safety obligations at nearly 100%. We get a few slight dollars from our replacement tax, but this formula reflects the same 100% funding by 2040 for public safety, meaning police and fire pensions. And then the remainder is 50% of our funding obligation for IMRF and 50% of our funding obligation for Social Security will come from the property tax. And then a flat $500,000 in support of general fund operations. So that's the formula. Police and fire pension funding at 100% by 2040, 50% of our IMRF and Social Security obligation, and then a flat $500,000. So I just wanted to point out that's the formula. But again, if council chooses to modify or go a different direction, we will react.
Further comments? Let me just sum up a couple of things that I see that we probably should talk about. The first is the budgeting process, and I think this is something to pay attention to. As long as I've been mayor, staff year in and year out has brought us very tight budgets. Not a lot of, I would say not a lot of fluff in the budget. Actually, I would say there's no fluff in the budget. Very, very, very tight budgets. And they're very mindful of doing that going forward. So a $500,000 cut may not seem like a lot to the budget, but that might be 8 employees. That might be a project, a cut of 8 employees. That might be a project that's been budgeted for the coming year that won't get done. So we have to be mindful of the fact that we do very, very close and tight budgets, that a $500,000 cut will result in either a staff reduction, unlikely, or a project that doesn't get done that we have budgeted for. That's a real fact. And I think it's important, too, that it reflects on the culture of staff and how they approach these things. Some things that have come up recently, for instance, are lead line replacement. And staff's reaction to the press when that was happened is, we saw this coming and we started doing this in the 1980s. And we're pretty much complete with it now. And I think this is an important reference to show you that staff is proactive and looking to the future to be fiscally responsible for the citizens of our community. Another one would be the water rates that we do. We have been incremental in raising our water rates. Again, as Ms. Reese pointed out, that's a enterprise fund, and those dollars pay for the services, and that's all they do. And we have small incremental increases every year that we have voted for. And we look at a nearby community where that did not happen, and they saw a 300% increase in water rates projected over the next 3 years. This is something we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid shocking people by not doing proper budgeting and paying very, very close attention to what's going forward. Now, we did have some surplus, and I think a lot of that had to do with the additional funds we got from the federal government, our ERA funds, and that. But that's not going to happen year in and year out, and those funds are expended. So now those are no longer part of the budget. And we are projecting some downturns in our sales tax across the nation. That's popping up. So we're being mindful of that and trying to be, again, proactive in how we approach that. So this is why I'm supporting this. I'm not going to get into the argument of do people need $7 every year or not. I don't think that's appropriate to this discussion. What's appropriate is, do we continue to deliver the high-quality services and support the people that deliver those services in our community. I think that's the issue for me tonight, and that's why I'm going to vote yes on this project, or on this levy. Please call the roll.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
No.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
No.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That item is approved. On our agenda tonight, we have a presentation on smart cities initiatives. That's going to be delayed till the next meeting. So at this point, before we take a motion for adjournment, are there comments or concerns? And of course, Ms. Smith, you get to lead.
It's fortuitous that this year, this council meeting is happening the same week as Seedling Theater production of their Christmas program. My daughter is a proud member of the chorus, and their shows are Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. at First Christian Church, and a matinee on Sunday at 3 p.m. Seedling Theater is like Penguin Project. It's a program designed to provide an artistic outlet for individuals with special needs, and they're doing a medley of Christmas carols this year that they picked out. And they would love your support if you can make it to one of the shows. The Thursday night show is Pay What You Can, because you'll be putting up with their dress rehearsal. Thank you.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks. Just a quick shout out to the number of people who came and joined us here in person tonight. There are council meetings where this room is fairly empty, and there are others where it is quite full. And obviously, some action that we took tonight impacts all of you guys directly. I hope that you walk out of here proud and glad that your council in Normal unanimously supported what came to us tonight, and glad to do so. And thanks for being here.
Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Kus?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.